In this next block, we're going to be talking about one of my personal favorite topics, which is competitive dynamics. And so we've been talking about our business strategies and for a little bit of time ignoring our competitors. Now what we're going to do is jump back into the middle of the Porter's Five Forces box, and that's the inter-firm rivalry, and talk about how that tends to work. And I'll be honest, some of you are going to be a little uncomfortable with this topic because this idea of winning and losing, particularly when it's the expense of your rivals, is a little uncomfortable. And so we'll just take that for what it's worth and dive in. You see, again, my slide, my Dilbert slide on the screen talks about the fact that sometimes people who may seem like they should be your friends are always angling for an advantage. And in the marketplace, I think you have to take that as a given. So I want to begin with a discussion, and I'm going to present you with two scenarios, and I'm going to ask you which you would prefer. In the scenario on the left, you are number 2 in an industry. Overall, the industry profit pool, meaning the combined profits of the 3 major competitors, is about $100 million. And you're second with $35 million, but competitor A has profits of $50 million. You can see the competitor B is much smaller, but still very credible with profits of $15 million. In the scenario on the right, what has happened is you've taken a series of competitive actions, whether it's price cuts, new products, service enhancements, whatever. And you can see in the process of so doing, 2 important things have happened. First is you have moved from being number 2 in the industry to being number 1, which, let's face it, when you're talking to your board of directors, a lot easier when you're number 1 than when you're number 2. But overall, you have drained the profit pool in the industry. Now, most of the losses have been at the expense of competitor A. They've gone from profits of $50 million to profits of $25 million. You've only gone from 35 to 30, and competitor B only went from 15 to 10. But the profit pool for the industry is much smaller. So now, let me ask you again, which situation would you prefer? The one on the left, where your profits are higher, but you're number 2, or the one on the right, where you're number 1, albeit with a lower profit? This isn't a slam dunk question. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. You can make a case for the situation on the left where you're number 2 because your profits are higher, your earnings per share is going to be higher, probably your stock price for your investors are going to be higher. So you can make a case that number 2, the one on the left, where you're number 2, is a better situation. Likewise, I can make the case that the one on the right is a better situation, largely by arguing that it's a transient condition. That by harming competitors A and B, I've denied them the profits to perhaps continue to out-innovate me into the future. In other words, I've hurt them such that they're going to become a less worthy competitor over time. And maybe my stock price really will be higher, even though my earnings per share are down, because I am number 1 in the industry. The interesting thing is, some of you are going to be faced with exactly this situation in the business strategy game. A lot of times, the way to climb in the number 1 position is to initiate a price war that's going to harm everyone, least of all you, though, so that you will be less profitable, but you're hoping you're going to make everybody else proportionally less profitable too, such that you come out on top. The first question we have to ask in the situation of competitive dynamics is, who is my competitor? On the one level, that seems easy. You could say it's everybody in that box in the Porter's Five Forces. In the other way, you could say maybe not everybody there is really my competitor. So I called up an old slide from this textbook where it talks about strategic groups. And the point I want to make from this is, do you think that Ferrari views Ford as a competitor? Probably not. Do you think that BMW views Ford as a competitor? Probably, but not a particularly pressing one, not the one that they probably worry about the most. Our textbook has a great discussion of Reed Hastings. In his view, Reed Hastings is the CEO and founder of Netflix. Now, he talked about They see lots of potential competitors, but they largely ignore them. And one of those people they ignore, believe it or not, is YouTube. I don't want to say they ignore them. They don't consider them a direct competitor. Better terminology there. And the reason is, Hastings says YouTube has a different business model. They just try to get eyeballs so that advertisers will pay rates. We, on the other hand, at Netflix have a subscription-based model. We want people to pay in advance to get access to our content library. How could the situation change? When YouTube starts launching pay channels, in other words, you have to pay to view that channel, which they've toyed with in the past, then they would in fact be a direct competitor with YouTube, and with Netflix. That was something that they would have to worry about. As we launch into the slides, I want to tell you a little bit about our textbook. This topic is by far the weakest topic in this textbook. I'm very familiar with the evolution of this material in the textbook, in part because, full disclosure, I did a lot of the research that you see in this textbook. I was working with one of the co-authors, and I helped them build the competitive dynamics section. So I'm real familiar with what's in this chapter. I didn't write any of it. I did the background research and made some suggestions, nor do I have any continuing financial interest in the textbook. So I don't make any more money from this textbook. It was a one-time deal I did many years ago. But what they didn't have this material in the textbook, and it was a competitive disadvantage. Most other textbooks in strategy will have a full chapter devoted to the subject. Well, they thought they had a competitive advantage because they have a chapter on entrepreneurship where most textbooks don't. So they shoehorn this material at the back end of the entrepreneurship textbook, and that works well. They segued in by saying, well, when you're launching new firms, usually it's not a new to the market thing, so you're in essence attacking other firms, and that's how they get into the material. Fine job of getting into the material, but I'm going to be honest with you, they leave out a lot. So in the videos to follow, you're going to see I introduce a lot of material that I think is very important that is not in the textbook. So look forward to sharing that material with you.